Well, friends, for the first time in a long time, like 10 years, my Oz collection is more organized, picked up, and actually dusted and cleaned than it's been. Seriously, 10 years. So I figured I'd run around and do a little tour and show you all some of the things that make it possible for me to live in Oz. Let me get over, this is my desk area, let me get over to where you come into the room, and then we'll go slowly as I can so y'all don't get dizzy from camera work. This table is supposed to be a work table. Usually it's a dropping off spot. I am, however, working with Oz cookbooks right now for a themed calendar for the Wizard of Oz Club. Found that lamp in a country auction. I found quite a few things in that auction. It was fabulous. I recently did an art exhibit that forced me to frame a lot of things that had not previously been framed, and solutions for storing them in the Oz room include stands like these. I have 3 in different sizes, and in these I can just stack like these beautiful Wesley Lowe paintings. I can just stack and flip through them so I can at least see what I have, even if everything can't be on the walls at the same time. My walls, I'm on the 3rd floor of the house, so my walls all slant horribly, and I just don't have a lot of flat space. I do have flat window space, however, for Century Studios glass panels. Bill Campbell and Irwin Terry make these in Minneapolis. I have 12. There's another window we'll see in a minute. I bought directly from the studio, and this set of 8 was another set they did that I bought in a public auction. We have my Winky Guard from the 1989 Macy's Herald Square. Bought him in an auction at the Oz Club after he was donated to us, and my dear friend, the late Lynn Belts, drove him from Chittenango, New York to Kansas City for me. The flying monkey behind him, there's actually 2 on a wooden panel, was used at Crown Center. I don't know how it got away from them and into a local vintage market, but it did. The hourglass is a David Hood. He passed away a few years ago, but he made full-sized replica ornaments. This fun little flying monkey was in a fine art studio at the Grove Park Inn in Asheville, North Carolina, and I thought I had to have him. Back here in this glass case, I have primarily things associated with release of the 1939 film. These 2 little bows are a bit of a long story, but they're replicas of the original bows that we had made for a fundraiser. We only made 4 and only sold 2, so I, by default, entered the fundraiser and bought the other 2. This is a great Swift Oz peanut butter ad, a colored newspaper one. Little bits and pieces up here, I think, but what's far more interesting are things inside. The large sweeper, I also have the small one. Oh, it's too dark to really see it, but I've got the little rubber Tin Man back there. These 3 and then a 4th Dorothy doll are all the medium sized. I bought my soaps at Hakes Americana years ago. I only have 1 hanger, the flying monkey, and that is it. I just recently got the Oz ice cream box mix from a girlfriend, and I need to straighten that up. It fell over. He is my only ideal scarecrow. It's so funny to have so many Dorothys and only 1 scarecrow. String heads, I'm still missing Toto. Here's the small size Bissell sweeper, a couple of the older peanut butter cans and jars with plastic lids. Just some interesting bits and pieces of things in there. Most of my autographs are on photos or framed with photos of the principals, but I have a few extras and that includes them. Jack back there is an Etsy handmade doll. Stife Lion. Belina is from a Oz Club centerpiece, so she's mass produced to be a plush chicken, but not to be an Oz one. One of the overhauls in my collection up here recently was this case. It used to be down in our dining room. Ooh, tripping. And that's what I get when I can't see where I'm going. But I needed to see if I had some duplicate glasses, and it took emptying all of the glassware on this shelf, sorting it and putting it back together. there was a cleaning step in between. So we've got cookie jars, dishes, glasses, a few star jars up here that my friend Jolene got at a country auction for me. I think there's 4 on the top up there. I only had Dorothy before she turned them up at an auction for like, you know, 20 bucks a piece or something insanely low. I've got a little bit of international tucked in here because I have some dishes that are from Japan and a few pieces from Coney Island in there as well. One of my coolest Coney Island pieces isn't displayed. It's a tablecloth that's in one of these drawers. All the drawers are full of fabrics. These 2 scarecrow dolls are one of my greatest treasures and really scarce items. I had the first one, which is this little guy down here. He's very faded. You see how brown he is? And when I got this one, my first thought was he had a replica costume because it was so different. But then I came to look at mine and realized that sure enough, he'd been that green and that blue somewhere in his history. And it was only now that he's been faded from the bright colors to being tan. He was made by the Oz Toy Manufacturing Company back in the 20s. It was Frank Jr.'s company. This wonderful Tonner doll is something David Dykett told me about. It was actually purchased in, or I'm sorry, it wasn't purchased, it was won in a contest that Tonner ran for, I think it was Wizard of Oz photographs. And the prize were 2 of these dolls. They were the artist's proof, and Robert Tonner signed their neck. Both of them became available for sale. David found out about them. He bought one, I bought the other. Here's a centerpiece from an Oz Club convention in 2012 made by Bill Campbell again. I'm going to mention him a few times because there's so many cool things that I have because of his handiwork. This little globe, either Dick Martin made it or had it made for an Oz Club convention, probably in the early 60s. I forget the year. It was photographed with a little scarecrow and patchwork girl doll, not these specific ones. I can follow the patches on Scrap's face and know it was a different one. But Dick had 3 sets of these dolls made. There was also a Jack Pumpkinhead doll. Patty Tobias, my friend since what, somewhere in the 70s, bought those at a convention when she was just a little kid, and I got them from her not too long ago. Moving over to this section of the Oz room that's behind that first glass case. Oh wait, let me stop here. This is just a sideways barrister bookcase shelf serving as a display case. This is my small Judy Garland doll, Ideal doll, and my larger size one. She came in 3 sizes. And back here, Sweet Patchwork Girl. Some of you may have seen an article I wrote for Antique Doll Magazine recently. She was the cover girl of that issue. She's made of old antique silks, and she's in very fragile condition. Patchwork Girl is probably a favorite character for me. I can't think of one I love more, although I'm fond of them all. Down here is where I have the Raycroft jackets, Raycroft and Dick Martin jacketed Oz book sets from the 60s. And I think there's some great and powerful toys down there. Anyway, moving over to this room, this section of my space is where I wanted to have dolls, toys, games, things that were meant to be played with and used up and yet somehow survived. There's certainly other things in here. My framed autographed are in here. The Irma Star ornaments are down in this pie. This old glass case was originally designed to display slices of pie in a deli. Ed Hoover gave me pretty much all of the celebrity ducks. Here are the other 6 panels that went with that first one I mentioned that Bill and Irwin made. Tucked around here, all the VHS, some DVDs, that kind of media that I have. A few little bits and pieces from the Oz Kids, and the VHS tapes that Willard sent my daughter when she was 2. Willard Carroll produced the Oz Kids. These are mostly Ruby slippers or Oz shoes that I have to wear, and they just sort of pile up back in that corner. This loaded cradle was my grandmother's, and I have it full of plush Oz toys. Back here, a wonderful a wonderful Santa Claus covered with the Oz characters made by a local Kansas City artist. I'm absolutely delighted to have the pitter-patter scarecrow. He's designed, you pull a string and he speaks. Mine no longer has a speaking mechanism, but he is still in his original shrink wrap. I bought him off of eBay from a seller in St. Louis, then drove to St. Louis antiquing with my sister to pick him up in person. This is the Sheila Quarter Margaret Hamilton doll, made for UFDC convention back in, I'm going to guess, the 80s, and I don't have that date in my head, so I could be wrong. This wonderful dresser was made by Nancy Petrasko. Nancy is Fred Meyer's sister. I'm sorry, Fred Meyer's niece. Her mom was Nancy Petrasko, Fred's sister. Fred Meyer was all but single-handedly responsible for the continuation of the Oz Club for years. He never served as bugle editor, but he was our secretary for like 40 years, and his communication with everybody made a tremendous difference in keeping us involved in the Oz Club. Back here I have Swift's Oz peanut butter products. I have the Mego dolls and play sets. Most of them boxed, some of them set up for play. I got the Witch's Castle when I was in high school. A couple high school friends brought it over to me, so that's a very vivid memory. I really never expected to have dolls, because I started out my Oz collecting life as a book collector, but I just started accumulating them, and I don't tend to buy them at retail. I tend to find them at estate sales or eBay or something. These are the Presents dolls in boxes, in case you didn't know they came in boxes. I didn't before I found them. Tucked back in there is a disastrous storage area that you don't want to see on camera. Oh, my Tuscany figures. This is a great story. I bought the big characters through an auction that was advertised in Indiana, but did not have online bidding or anything. All I could do was send them how much money I was willing to pay and hope I wouldn't be outbid. I got them, and in the photo you couldn't even see that Dorothy was there. I thought I was just getting the other 5, and then Dorothy was there after all. And Dorothy has this little excuse for Toto in her basket. He's, about the size of a gerbil. But I didn't realize there was actually a Toto, but there was this little guy. And I bought it from Susie Castle on eBay. She made a point of sharing that this particular one had been made by Bill Eubank. Bill was a dear friend of mine. In fact, I wrote a story, Billy Bumble of Oz, about presenting him as a child. He'd signed it and put his bumblebee mark that he put on his illustration work and other things. And I was so excited to have something that Bill made, and I came up here, sat him down with all my figures, and started looking around and realized that figure after figure, Bill's bee was on all of them. So he had actually made this set. So fun to get those together. What a small world. I keep a lot of little things in this case. It's my only small case that has a light, which is, off, except I'm recording today. I keep little bitty miniature dolls for scale. See how tiny she is in my hand? Shorter than my finger. Quite a few miniature dolls. The candle crown, candle snuffers are in there. Those crazy little clay figures I made in high school, they don't count. Some Deb Cannon bears, a few Japanese ornaments, just lots of just fun little miniature things. A couple little souvenirs from Banner Elk, the Land of Oz theme park there. The cows, I don't really care about having the cows in my collection, except my daughter was about 5 when the full-size ones were in Kansas City, and she and I went down to the building where they were displayed, and she posed with them. That is the Off to See the Wizard Jack-in-the-Box in the box. Something I'm especially happy to have. I love getting things that are still in the box. They're harder to come by. And it's also just fun to get things that people, we would never have expected them to last. This is this record player. Here's the turntable with a little mouse who needs a crown. Has the Scarecrow and Tin Man on it, along with other Mother Goose characters. And this particular one, oh dear, now I can't remember the word. Is it a xyloscope? A light came on the inside, and you wove these paper strips through the slits in it, and the whole thing rotated. I may be able to get a little shot of one in action because a friend of mine out in California has one. A couple of really old marionettes. I just think they're darling. And the owner who made them, or whoever made them, used very heavy feet. So I think it was an experienced puppeteer of a parent. My little munchkin maid in there is also a 1989 Macy's Herald Square thing. This is clothing, not, aside from this one green piece, it's really not costumes. It's just random pieces of clothing that were made expecting people to like wear them in public. I guess one little costume, I have a miniature, or the size Fairuza wore as a child that is about to go into an exhibit at the Oz Museum that I'm putting together. I do exhibits there that switch about every 6 months, and I'm going to do Return to Oz in time for their annual Oztoberfest event. Here are some interesting copies of The Wizard of Oz, primarily. My better Oz books, meaning my older ones, not necessarily the better condition ones, but are all in here. I have a couple that are signed by L. Frank Baum, his by The Candelabra's Glare, and I believe a copy of Queen Zixia-Vix that had belonged to one of his sons. So these are my rare, more interesting Oz books. My first edition Bombs. I only have one in a dust jacket, that being Rinkatink. Pretty sure that Magic must not be a first edition because I don't think I have it. Well, maybe it is. It would be a Riley and Lee. That might distinguish it. I'm always thinking I only have one Riley and Britton Oz jacket. Then there's a shelf of books that Baum wrote under his own name. And the Oz books down at the bottom, many of which are jacketed, were the ones I grew up with as a child. We had those in my home. And we had two neighbors that also had a shelf of Oz books, and they had very generously loaned them to me so I could read them all when I was just a little kid. On top we have those MGM busts. This that looks like a letter to a fan from Baum is actually from Maud. It was written after Frank died, and she signed his name to it. The Ron Cron heads, Wicked Witch, Scarecrow, Dorothy, Tin Man, Carry the Lions Not Facing the Camera. I don't have Toto and Glinda. Hope I'll get them someday. I've always thought those were an especially interesting kind of an ornament. This quadrant of the room, of the space, is kind of the library. It's where I've clustered most of the books that are part of my collection, and I've always felt like the books are the foundation of my collection since that's where I started. This central case is full of Oz books. My dad had this case made for me when I was, I think, in college, and I've had it with me all these years. It's just multiple copies of Oz books, and I probably need to go through it and purge it and narrow it down to just one or two, because in some cases I have a lot. The little dolls are Ruth Ellen's. She was a doll maker in Colorado. I don't know if she's still with us or not. And the Scraps and Scarecrow head were things Bill Eubank made. Just talked about him a minute ago. This is a John O'Neill original from Wonder City that I bought in that bibliophile auction that included a lot of things from Fred Meyer's collection. This case is L. Frank Baum books written under names other than his own, or his own names, but they aren't Oz books, and they're overflow from the earlier case. So I have a lot of things in here: Snuggle Tales, Ozman Tales. I have a couple jacketed pseudonymous books. Lots of nice pieces. That thing with Oz right there with Baum peeking out behind it is a mock-up dust jacket that Dick Martin did for To Please a Child, Baum's biography that was not used. He also drew in red pencil his proposed end papers for the inside of it. And I love this Rick Weiscarver cookie jar. I didn't realize how big it was until I saw one at the Oz Museum in Wamego, Kansas. Past the flag, I used to have this case, the one that's, well, it's in the middle of the screen right now, Scarecrow bookend at the top, full of Neil Thompson, other later Oz artists and authors. And then everything in this section had reference books along the back shelves for quite a while. That is a Christmas card from Ruth Plumley Thompson that my dear friend Patrick Mont gave me many years ago. And this is Ruth Plumley Thompson's dinner bell that she included in Oz Stories, if you remember that. It was a gift from Fred Meyer's sister. I have some Sabuda pieces there. Reference books start on the bottom. Over here was originally my Denslow material and nothing else. The side over here that starts with the wonderful Queen of Hearts plate. I'm still looking for the Rain, Rain, Go Away plate, and bits of advertising and things that he did. And then I started putting Wicked in it, the books anyway, Gregory Maguire's, and then the movie came out and exploded, and now I've got Wicked merch all over the floor until I figure out where to put it. This is an original Denslow illustration. It is the Scarecrow from Oz. He's depicted the same way, but it's actually from The House That Jack Built, story that he did of the nursery rhyme. All of my Denslow stuff, other stuff, is pretty much in here because Denslow signed everything with his little seahorse mark. This is a door knocker lying on its back that's the larger size. The smaller one's outside on a door. Anyway, because he signed everything with this little seahorse, you can often find book jackets that he designed anonymously because the little seahorse is worked into the design. So I have a lot of his stuff. That's a fun hunt for me. They're upside down from this angle, but some beautiful old Italian editions from the 40s are inside that case. That fun little wooden woozy was something a friend of Bill Beam's started making a few years back, and I was happy to get some. Wonderful Rinky-Tink doll from the collection of the late Theo Carson. Bought it from her son. This particular one of my 2 chalkware lamps was a gift from Willard Carroll. Down here we have the Maslowski bust of Baum, some fun little handmade dolls. Another deep dark storage area that we won't mention. Over here, this house was a Munchkin house on the set of The Muppets Wizard of Oz. Disney sold off a whole lot of those props after that show was done. These are my largest of the Muppet Wizard of Oz dolls. They came in several sizes, and I don't have the very largest. The Baum portrait up there, I commissioned Joe Shipbo to do for an Oz Club convention recently. That's another original Denslow from the collection of Robin Olderman. Here we have more copies of The Wizard of Oz and related books. I've got some Matilda Gage stuck down there. Henri de Shield's autograph, just an extraordinary man. This was Irene Fisher, another old Oz Club person who did some wonderful Oz art. Let's see, what else before I leave this area. Little child in a dress. I love the cutout of Neil's Dorothy. I used to use to represent that style costume in a fashion show of Dorothy's, but since then I've had no, I didn't have that dress made. Judy Bieber gave me that dress. She'd made it. It had been her daughter's in an old costume thing. So now that I have a real Neil dress for a child, I can do that. I also have a real Neil style dress that an adult can wear that Carol Carlson made. So I can use that occasionally too. This is the British first edition, the American second edition, and just the oldest Wizard of Oz I have in a dust jacket. This whole case is full of comic books, graphic novels. Back here, let me move this chair a bit. I have a really fun quilt. It fits, I don't remember, either a full or a queen-sized bed, but someone did a beautiful job of making that. And right next to it is a mass-produced, speaking of beautiful jobs, skirt with beautiful Denslow illustrations on it that is from Japan. Baby, the Stars So Bright was the brand name. I don't know why I got Funkos, but I do. And now I'm getting Wicked Funkos, so they're multiplying. Another Coney Island souvenir. The Land of Oz, as you can see, is the upper left-hand corner. Hideous fringed velvet pillow. Back here, okay, this would be my desk. Not usually this clean, but I straightened it up to do this shoot. That case is full of signed books, signed generally by modern illustrators, or if it's something that I found vintage and signed. It's tucked in there as well. My sister wrote Ray Bolger to get his autograph for me when I was in high school. This case has a lot of things that predate the MGM film that were largely made by the publishers, or are simply published books, except that piece of artwork tucked back there. That's original artwork of John Coulter's. Enchanted Island is a window card from the amusement park for children at the 1933-34 World's Fair. The Wogglebug Game of Conundrums. The Wogglebug lesson cards are right there under the Wogglebug ones on the top with the scarecrow. The little Christmas stocking tails, a trunk, a boxed pear. Just random things. If you were here, you'd be saying, oh, tell me about that. And I'd go into detail, but otherwise we'll be here all day. Thrilled to find the collapsible cup that was distributed with an early Broadway production of The Wizard of Oz. I'm thinking it was the second 100. I'd have to look at the bottom. A little jewel box I don't have was the first. And this razor has The Wizard of Oz very clearly engraved at its base. So I suspect it might have been another souvenir. Atticus Scanaway in particular was always finding ads and things that talked about souvenirs at every performance, and we've never really known what they were, so it's possible. The wattles in here are original. It's hard to display them because if you stand them up, they're going to bend under the weight, which happened to my bookmarks. They're quite curly and now they're lying flat. But I have some original wattles in there, 2 assembled and 2 not. The Scarecrow book back there is a blank notebook. Wonderful set of 2 Jell-O puzzles and the little miniature books that were boxed with them. That set, gosh, I'm trying to get around the reflections. That set and this gorgeous, wonderful Land of Oz library were both things that I found online that were being sold by someone who wouldn't ship them or take a check or a credit card. And I turned to local friends to go running over to buy them for me. And so thanks to Melissa Tonneson, I have the Jell-O books, and thanks to Bill Campbell, I have the wonderful library. Lee Theriot had this little Visitors from Oz mobile of the Gump, and then I have quite a few wonderful games of Oz. Sorry to be a hoarder, but I kind of love that game. Some Michael Haig, one of my Barry Mosher pieces. Pirates of Oz Bell is another Ed Hoover piece. This, sorry about all the plastic on it. This newspaper map of Oz was part of a coloring contest with the rules for kids printed on the left-hand side. I had a huge box, well, several boxes in an auction in Illinois, and I won the lot because I saw a corner of this map sticking out and knew I wanted it, and they wanted so much money to ship it, it would have tripled my price. But my friend Steve Smith lived 5 minutes away. He picked it up and held it in his house until I could come visit. Scarecrow I just bought from Jim Rutter, well, earlier this year. Rob Roy McVeigh, an old and dear friend, made Scarecrow and Tin Man to hold the Del Rey Oz books. My Tin Man had been in Robin Olderman's collection. And my latest and quite obviously greatest treasure is this Patchwork Girl of Oz. She was made in the 1920s to promote sales of Oz books in bookstores. She's another thing that had been in in Dick Rutter's collection that Jim has been, his son, has been finding new homes for as his dad is willing to let go of some of his treasures. Behind my desk, when I moved into the room up here, these shelves were empty and everything else was full, so I just kept putting things in them, whether they had any organization or not. I do keep a whole run of bomb bugles right there. And there are a few interesting pieces, but for the most part, like the Stangl plate. I also have the bowl, but it's in another spot. I need to find that Scarecrow mug. Love the Simpich figures. I bought them one at a time. I didn't find them as a set. I have a couple sets of the boxed Treasury of Oz. The set on the right the box is starting to split, so I need to find it a new home. Reproduction waddles, ones I actually put together. Those things are hard to put together, let me tell you. Oh, this shelf of Oz books back here behind Tin Man's elbow, that belonged to the McCarthy family that lived down the block from me, and when they were emptying their house, they knew how my Oz hobby had grown over the years and asked me if they wanted their family Oz books. So of course I did. And I was especially happy to then be able to have some of the ones that I read as a child. Isn't this great? Oz Yuma Honey Balls. It's a fruit label from Honey Balls out of Yuma, Arizona. Or is it Yuma, New Mexico? Can't tell from here. Arizona. Up here's a great piece I love of the Wiz. Muhammad Ali's doctor did all these pop art characters in arts and prints, and that's a signed print of the Wiz. It's hard to find stuff for the Wiz. There's not a whole lot of merchandise that was released either with the film or with the stage play, so I like what I have. This was a piece Ryan J gave me when the Wiz Live was coming out. I had a big party at the house. That would have been 10 years ago, and it was one of the last times I had the room cleaned up. This is my other chalkware lamp. It's not on. It does come on, but the knob's missing, and I have to do it with a pair of pliers. So I just didn't do it today. Down in there is something worth seeing. That white Tin Man and Scarecrow. Gosh, I wish there was more light. That white Tin Man and Scarecrow are prototypes that were never produced of some really lovely Neil-like figurines. Here's how the Tin Man would have appeared painted. And then Ozma and Glinda are handmade pottery pieces that I purchased from Catherine Petrasko's antique shop back when she had one in Appleton, Wisconsin. The Goebel figures, love them, can hardly believe it when you find them unbroken. And this little set at the bottom that people will probably remember as banks, for some reason this particular set is solid. They're not hollowed out to be banks. The mold was left full. Too long a story to share right now, but this particular Judy Garland standee that was made to hold videotapes back in 1989 had been in Margaret Pellegrini's house. Turning this corner, what is worth, oh, my wonderful big print I had made of L. Frank Baum with his cast from the Fairy Logan radio play. Bob Baum sent me a especially high resolution photo, and I photoshopped this a lot to lighten it enough to be able to make out the characters. If you see it published in Annotated Wizard of Oz or somewhere, it's usually pretty hard to read. I also had the nerve to flip Ozma's wand around, her staff, I guess you'd call it, because in the original picture, it's either it's been flipped around in her hand. The whole picture isn't printed backwards, or the Ozma book behind them would be backwards. But her wand was, and it always frustrated me, so I made it say Oz instead of whatever it said. Here we have the Michael Roche figure from 9/11, the Franklin Mint dolls, a few music boxes and pieces that I've found interesting over time. Some darling little pieces from the Hollywood Wax Museum. Zoe got me, was it the pencil case or the little purse back there that has the Hollywood plastic children's glasses on it at an estate sale years and years and years ago. What's back there? Oh, those little shoes with the heads on them. I just have Tin Man and Lion. I need to find a Scarecrow. Okay, let's see what else is around here. I've got to zoom out and look up. Oh, we've got a couple more of the Star Jars, Cookie Jars, Flying Monkey, and Tin Man. I think I bought both of those at Oz Club auctions. We had a whole set donated at one point. Odds and ends of figurines. When we originally set up this room, it was my plan to have it be Oz free, this section of the room, so my family could sit here and watch television. But if you're up here when the air conditioning or the heat kicks on and you hear how loud it is, you'll understand why nobody's up here watching television. This is definitely a canvas print, not an original. Humpty Dumpty's a childhood Humpty Dumpty. I don't know how he got up here. I keep CDs here to play. I'm not playing music now because I don't want somebody cutting off the video for copyright violation. These, along with the two witches, were friends from my friend, Jeff Ostarian. Did I just pronounce your name right? I've got to look that up again. This is a William Stout piece from the Doomed theme park here in Kansas City. And this was from an Italian artist who was illustrating The Wizard of Oz for, I think it's Princess Trina, maybe it's Princess Tina comics, or a little girls magazine in England back in the 60s. I was looking for a copy of Wizard of Oz to give somebody one day and found this folded up inside one of my copies. It's just a little 3-panel advertising piece. Anna Maria Kuhl did this Ozma, considerably smaller, for the cover of Oziana, to illustrate a story that I'd written called A Portrait of Ozma. And I recently had it blown up to be a photo op at an Oz convention set. I love the Head Out to Oz poster, if you haven't seen it. Another little piece of art from the theme park. I have several, but most of them are really large. Oh, my lions down here are replicas from Return to Oz. They were part of the architecture in the background. Here's another bit of costume, the female half of the 1995 traveling company. The green one, the green male costume, was over with my clothing display. Another John Coulter piece. I just can't have enough of John Coulter. That Wizard of Oz poster and that one, you know, Dorothy and Meet Me in St. Louis, Judy, I should say, and Meet Me in St. Louis, are both original reprints. And they're hiding all kinds of stuff I store back there, including lots and lots of framed art that has found a new home back there. Dick Martin's wonderful map of Oz. Oh, and this charming little piece, this was the Jelly Jam costume design for Shirley Temple's Land of Oz television show. What else? These little dolls I just recently had made for an Oz Club convention to be everyone's souvenirs. I used an image of one side of the 1920s Oz toy manufacturing dolls, printed it on both sides, and stuffed them with a zipper. Then we're kind of getting down to the end, believe it or not, since I'm not telling you about every single thing. We're almost done. And that means we are in front of my international collection. Giant snowboard I bought from France. A lot of translations of books, a few, you know, actually produced overseas, mass-produced products, like those little hand puppets are British. Quite a bit's produced in Japan. I have the first edition of the Russian retelling Alexander Volkov's story, his version of The Wizard of Oz, and that little figure is a folk art doll from Russia that came with the word scarecrow in Russian with him, and may very well have been designed to represent the original illustrations in the book. Oh dear, I can't remember his name. I want to say Ladlov. Not Vladimirsky, he didn't illustrate it until later, but the original illustrator had a scarecrow that looked very much like that. My little Return to Oz heart-to-heart figures are in there, some Monchichis, although the Cowardly Lion is hidden in a plastic bag. He smells of mold spores, so I don't let him out to share oh, there's puzzles up there because I didn't know where to put them. Wonderful recording of Fairuza Balk singing. Some Return to Oz dolls. I only have these three, Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Fairuza. I found Tin Man locally when a local collector was closing up her collection and selling out, and she had no interest in him because she was an MGM collector, and I was thrilled to get him. Then this set of handmade Russian dolls I bought from the maker over in Russia. They're sort of a Etsy-like site over there. Board games. They're actually posed in a Japanese baby stroller. These are just overflow books and games and things that I've acquired since the case became so full I just couldn't really use it anymore. Oh, tucked back there, I'll focus in on it. See that little orange corner? That's a pinkish castle. That's a big wallpaper panel cut from a roll that Wally Kruger gave me. That pretty much sums up the bulk of my collection, unless, you know, you're here and we show you every single piece and we take a whole lot longer to do it. But I just wanted to walk through and give you a look at my Land of Oz. Oh, my wizard's head was from a pop-up bar here in Kansas City. I bought it when it closed. Anyway, I have mentioned a whole lot of names, almost entirely. Oh, there's another John Coulter. That's the first one I bought from him. Almost everyone I know involved with Oz, I've met through the International Wizard of Oz Club, which I joined in 1971, when I would have been, that summer, so 13 or 14. And I started attending conventions right away. Peter Frampton. Otis Frampton just did this beautiful original artwork for me from his Patchwork Girl of Oz series that he's animating. Had it displayed at a convention just recently and met him at our convention in Aberdeen, South Dakota, 2025. I keep trying to tell you about the club and I get so distracted when I'm in here. Anyway, the Oz Club has been a wonderful source of relationships and friendships and great stuff, wonderful information. The Bomb Bugle is as informative as you can get where Oz is concerned. And I've met lots of other collectors who, like me, fill rooms with material that they have acquired and loved, and things we all have together. So if you're not a member of the Oz Club, I'd encourage you to join. ozclub.org is our website. Coming back to Todrick, I had this poster of Todrick and a bunch of other stuff in a case about sort of pop culture things at the Oz Museum in Wamego one day, and someone went running up to the front desk telling him how excited they were to see Todrick in the museum, and they're like, Todrick? They had to go through the whole museum to figure out where he was. He did such a fantastic job with Straight Out of Oz. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, ozclub.org. Again, I'm Jane Albright, past president, member now for 54 years and counting. I've sure loved my journey through Oz, and I'm assuming that anybody watching this is also a devoted fan and has a room of their own to share and talk about. Talk to you soon. Thank you.